Namo Dassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Dassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Dassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Hello everyone. So we are here for the weekly Sunday Sutta readings once again, and we are going through the Majjima Nikaya, which is the middle length discourses of the Buddha, is found within the basket of discourses or the Sutta Pitaka. And the Majjima Nikaya contains some of the most important, I mean, all the suttas are very important, but the Majjima Nikaya suttas contain a lot of very important information on practice of Dhamma and on how to live a good life as a Buddhist. And so the past couple of months, we went through the first two suttas, which was the Mula Pariyaya Sutta, which really sets the stage in your studies of Buddhism, because it sort of summarizes all the different kind of views that are present in this world and how it pertains to the Buddhist path. And then we talked about we read through the Sabbhasava Sutta, which deals with how to cut away the influxes, the defilements towards Nibbana, the 7 methods of developing our practice. And today we will be reading through the Dhammadāyāda Sutta, which is the third sutta of the Majjima Nikaya. And this one is not so much philosophical and more about virtue, about practice, about what it means to be a Buddhist, what it means to be a follower of the Buddha. And the translation of Dhammadāyāda Sutta is heirs in the Dhamma. And Dāyāda, if any of you know Sinhalese, so I think maybe Thai is the same, it means heritage, yeah? It's an inheritance. So it's talking about how we inherit the Dhamma. So this is a very important sutta for us to know in the modern age, because we do not have the Lord Buddha to teach us. So we have to rely on what we inherited from him, which is the Dhamma. And we'll go through it, and maybe we could finish it a lot faster than we did the other two suttas. So, thus have I heard. On one occasion, the Blessed One was living in Savatthi, in Jeta's grove, Anathapindika's park. There he addressed the bhikkhus thus: Bhikkhus, Venerable Sir, they replied, the Blessed One said this. So that's the stage, setting the stage. As we know, thus have I heard, this is Venerable Ananda reciting what he heard when he was in his proximity, what the Buddha was saying, and it was carried out in this pleasant grove of forest called Jeta's Grove, called Anathapindika Arama. It's because it was donated by this wealthy patron called Anathapindika, who was a very devout follower of the Buddha. And it was called Jeta's Grove because it was owned by the Prince Jeta before it was given to the Sangha. A lot of suttas take place here because the Buddha spent about 19 years, 19 vassas, 19 years in this place. And they lived in quite simple kutis. It was a big monastery with lots of monks, but it was quite a simple sort of place. And people can still go and look at it, see it nowadays in India, in Bihar. So there's a little footnote here, which will be talking about who the audience was. Because when we read a sutta, when we try to understand one, it is important to know who the audience was, because the Lord Buddha catered a specific discourse, a specific teaching according to what audience he is teaching to. And sometimes the audience were arahants, so the contents of the sutta may be quite hard for us to grasp or understand or accept, um, or even maybe quite dangerous for us to adapt in some cases, because it's just not the mind state that we are in. But some are aimed at lay followers, which are really good for lay people. Some are aimed at just normal bhikkhus, and sometimes they are towards bhikkhus who are monks who are getting in a little bit of trouble, either spiritually or otherwise. And this is one such case where he's addressing some troublemakers. So the Buddha delivered this sutta because many bhikkhus were becoming elated over gains and honor accruing to the Sangha, to the neglect of their spiritual training. Oh, see, that's a little bit dangerous, yeah? So the Sangha in the time of the Buddha, when he was starting out for the first 20 years or so of his since attaining Buddhahood and starting the Sangha, it was not very big. It was filled with a lot of enlightened beings and a lot of really faithful and very virtuous monks. But over time, certain elements started coming in, and they were starting to gain a lot of attention, like I mentioned, with patrons like Anathapindika who were very wealthy. So when they were seeing really, they were people love monks in Buddhist countries, because like we are a symbol of peace and of contentment and joy, and it makes people really happy to see monks. And giving dana is something that brings a great deal of happiness to people who are around monks all the time, who live in Buddhist countries. And even in India at the time wasn't Buddhist, but it had this mendicant lifestyle, was quite understood, so called shamanas. And people like to give to these wandering ascetics, to these wandering seekers of the truth, because I think it it makes them feel like they're part of it, and it gives good merit and good karma, and it makes people happy to be generous in these cultures. And um, so you get a lot of attention from wealthy people. Obviously you start getting a lot of very luxurious things. And so Lord Buddha is saying now that certain members were getting too carried away with all these gains and honor, and they were neglecting their spiritual needs, their spiritual training. The Buddha obviously could not lay down a training rule prohibiting the use of requisites, but he wanted to show the practice of the heirs in Dhamma to those bhikkhus who were earnestly desirous of training. So Lord Buddha couldn't just say, don't take it, don't take this stuff. Because that's unreasonable, because requisites are necessary for life, and luxuries are not. But sometimes lay people, it makes them really happy to give, so we sort of have to accept. So instead of outright banning it, Lord Buddha, out of compassion, said, okay, you need to be very careful with this stuff, you need to be really careful with it. And what is most important is the Dhamma. Is what is most important is this simple life of contentment, of renunciation, that is monkhood, which is a truly wonderful way of living. And those who practice it can feel the comfort and the happiness that it brings. So the Lord Buddha obviously wants every single one of his monks to feel this joy, to feel this happiness and contentment. So out of compassion, he's telling us to be careful, to not get intoxicated by these material things, because as you can see, the inheritance of material things can be problematic even for lay people. So how many times do we hear stories of families being torn apart after the death of a parent, uh, brothers fighting brothers and sisters for land, for house, for what is left, and it's really quite tragic. And so the Lord Buddha did not want this to happen to us monks, to the sangha. And this is a valuable lesson for the lay people as well, because we need to remember what is the most valuable thing that our parents leave us. Is it the lands, is it the house, is it the wealth, or is it the kindness that they showed us, is it the love that they gave us, is it the good advice they gave us, is it the good example they've set us. And if you were lucky enough to have a parent who was a really good example and happened to be wealthy, think carefully about what is so important about what they left us. Should I be resentful of my brother or my sister who got something more than I did, or should I just be happy that I had the time I had with my father, with my mother? And like that does, because we think, what is most important about what our father, the Lord Buddha, in Sinhalese we call Lord Buddha sometimes Buddhu Piyanan Wahanse, yeah? Lord, the Buddha, our father. So what did our father leave us? He left us the Dhamma, he left us the Sangha, he left us these precious robes. And so I think what is most important is it these buildings that are amazing, but what is most precious, it is the Dhamma, because it is the Dhamma that gives us freedom from suffering. So, bhikkhus, be my heirs in Dhamma, not my heirs in material things. Out of compassion for you, I have taught. How shall my disciples be my heirs in Dhamma, not my heirs in material things? So, like was mentioned before, he's teaching this out of compassion. He's not telling us to deny ourselves food and shelter and clothing, and telling us to completely live naked in the jungle or something, but he's telling us to really look at what is important. you know if you are my heirs in material things, not my heirs in Dhamma, you will be reproached thus. The teacher's disciples live as his heirs in material things, not as heirs in Dhamma, and I will be reproached thus. The teacher's disciples live as his heirs in material things, not as his heirs in Dhamma. So, likewise, so the Lord Buddha will reproach us if we don't become heirs, if we don't take the heritage of the Dhamma and use it, but rather the material heritage. And likewise, outsiders, lay people, and people who are sort of outside the sasana, who don't have any faith, or even those who have faith, and people who are not Buddhist may look at us and think they might have um, misconceptions and sort of a wrong idea about Buddhism, about the Sangha. They might think unskillfully, like that we are not as skillful as we are supposed to be. And, so it's important for us to be heirs of the Dhamma for the sake of our teacher as well. For, you know, if you are my heirs in Dhamma, not my heirs in material things, you will not be reproached, as it will be said. The teacher's disciples live as his heirs in Dhamma, not as his heirs in material things. And I will not be reproached, as it will be said. The teacher's disciples live as his heirs in Dhamma, not as his heirs in material things. Therefore, bhikkhus, my heirs in Dhamma, not my heirs in material things. Out of compassion for you, I have thought, how shall my disciples be my heirs in Dhamma, not my heirs in material things? Hmm? Keeps stating it again and again, so that it really hits our mind. Be my heirs in the Dhamma, use my heritage, use the heritage that I've left for you, the Dhamma, the teaching that will help you release from suffering. Do not think about these material things. Don't cling to them. Don't grasp to them. Use them skillfully as you need them, but don't attach yourself to them. Now, bhikkhus, suppose that I had eaten, refused more food, had my fill, finished and had enough, had what I needed, and some alms food was left over to be thrown away. So the Lord Buddha is starting a simile here, and he used similes quite a lot in his teaching. And in here, he is bringing up to the mind an example of two monks approaching the Lord Buddha after he's had his meal, and his head is full and there is some food left over. And in the sasana, we have to share everything within the Sangha. So a little glimpse into the monk's life. Everything is owned by the entire Sangha, Mahasangha. So the individual monks only can own eight things, eight requisites. So that's the robes that we wear, the bowl that we eat out of, a razor to shave our head and face, a water filter, a belt, and a sharpening stone. I think that's 8. Yeah, so only those are the things that we can own, but everything else you would see in a temple is owned by every single monk. Yeah, so any monk from the 4 directions who would come, they have freedom to use every single thing here. Like, the only thing they cannot do is take the robes off us and use it. But even then, out of compassion, we have to give to our brothers if they don't have something. So if our brother is hungry, we give them our food. We have to always think about our fellow monk, or nun, always thinking, always. And so Lord Buddha is saying here, there is something left. I've had my fill. So then 2 bhikkhus arrived, hungry and weak, and I told them, Bhikkhus, I have eaten, had what I needed, but there is this alms food of mine left over to be thrown away. Eat it if you like. If you do not eat, then I shall throw it away, where there is no greenery, or drop it into water where there is no life. So 2 bhikkhus are coming, really hungry and weak after a long journey. And so the Lord Buddha is offering them some food. But there is a catch. Well, not really a catch. It's freely offered. But this is after lunch, yeah? So one of the rules that you may know in the life of a monk is that we do not eat dinner. We do not eat after the sun is down from the zenith. So that's like a convention that we use to say, after this time you don't eat. Doesn't matter. You can't have any excuses. You can't eat. That's it. It's a form of surrendering our desire and just eating only what we need to survive. And honestly, that is perfectly enough. After I became a monk, I realized I was eating way too much when I was a layman. Like, there was no need for dinner. But anyway, so then one bhikkhu thought, the Blessed One has eaten, had what he needed, but there is this alms food of the Blessed One left over to be thrown away. If we do not eat it, the Blessed One will throw it away. But this has been said by the Blessed One. Okay? So we can eat this, but bhikkhus, be my heirs in Dhamma, not my heirs in material things. Now this alms food is one of the material things. Suppose that instead of eating this alms food, I pass the night and day hungry and weak, and instead of eating that alms food, he passed that night and day hungry and weak. So this bhikkhu didn't eat what was given by the Buddha, because he remembered this training rule that we have to restrain ourselves and not eat dinner. So he spent the night really tired and hungry. Yeah, that's not an easy thing to do after a long journey. Being offered some delicious food and saying, no, I can't, no, I'm okay. And especially from the Buddha. But he was very astute and diligent. So he had a strong enough mind to deny it. Then the second bhikkhu thought, the Blessed One has eaten had what he needed, but there is this almsfood of the Blessed One left over to be thrown away. Suppose that I eat this almsfood and pass the night and day, neither hungry nor weak. And after eating that almsfood, he passed the night and day, neither hungry nor weak. So this bhikkhu went for it, and felt very good physically. Now, although that bhikkhu by eating that almsfood passed the night and day, neither hungry nor weak, yet the first bhikkhu is more to be respected and commended by me. See, the Lord Buddha didn't reproach the monk who had the meal. He didn't criticize him or call him a bad monk, but he's saying that the monk who didn't partake should be more commended, because he is an inheritor of the Dhamma, not of the material thing. Why is that? Because that will for long conduce to his fewness of wishes, contentment, effacement, easy support, and arousal of energy. So even though he would spend that night hungry, this action of self-denial, of putting discipline before immediate comfort, will in the long term conduce to his fewness of wishes. So if you can endure such a thing as this, yeah, because of discipline, one is more likely to have a fewness of wishes, because like in the future you wouldn't wish for nice food all the time, because we have to eat whatever we are given. So like we won't be wishing, oh, this, I wish I could have some really delicious curry today, and instead you get something else. It's like, be happy with that. Don't wish for this and that. These lay people, they work really hard to provide us with food, and everything they give is such a wonderful gift. And it doesn't matter how small it is, doesn't matter what it is such a wonderful gift that they are giving out of love, out of generosity for us. So we shouldn't be wishing for something else, and we should be happy with whatever we get. And so this form of self-denial, it will prepare the mind to be capable of that level of acceptance. So you wouldn't be going around looking for food all the time. Instead, we'll be focused on what is really important, which is the Dhamma. And also, it leads to contentment in this way, like I mentioned, and effacement, that is not always thinking about the self, about me. Why can't I eat? Why can't I have this? Why can't I have that? And also, easy to support. That's very important. So we should be easy to support by lay people. Like we mentioned before, they work so hard for this. We should be easy to support. And the less wishes we have, the easier we are to support. And the arousal of energy. Yeah? So the mental fortitude that comes from this discipline, from being an heir of the Dhamma, it brings a real energy into the mind that uplifts our spiritual practice, that makes meditation easier to do, and has a lot more energy to keep meditating, to keep practicing the sila, and to keep practicing kindness, no matter what, even if we have to practice kindness towards someone who is not so kind. It requires a lot of energy to do this, and this kind of practice, this kind of discipline will really help us to apply our energy towards kindness and compassion a lot more in our practice of meditation. Therefore, bhikkhus, be my heirs in Dhamma, not my heirs in material things. Out of compassion for you, I have thought, how shall my disciples be my heirs in Dhamma, not my heirs in material things? Okay, so I think that's all the time we have today. So we talked about how important it is for us to be a heir in Dhamma and not of material things. And I talked a lot about monasticism here because it was directed at monastics. But as a layperson, you can consider this as well, about how to be an heir of the Dhamma, because we are all part of one community, that is the sasana. The four pillars of the sasana of the Buddha's dispensation is the Bhikkhu Sangha, that is the monks, the Bhikkhuni Sangha, that is the nuns, the Upasakas and the Upasikas, that is the male and female lay disciples. So we each one of us has a role in upholding the sasana, and each one of us is an heir of the Dhamma. So we need to think very carefully about how we can be a really good descendant of the Buddha, how we can be the perfect disciple, and then how to be heirs of the Dhamma. And each one of these factors that we mentioned, you can apply to yourselves. Think about what is most important. Is it sila or is it something else? So nowadays, one of the hardest precepts to keep, I think it was always like that, was the fifth precept. Yeah, drinking. Don't drink. That's very hard to do nowadays, because everybody drinks, and if you don't drink, people think you're a bit of a weirdo and you can't get friends or something. But that's not true. I mean, I've never tried that, because I did drink when I was a layman, because I was too weak in character to be to have that ability to deny alcohol, because out of peer pressure, being able to give in. But in the similar way to this bhikkhu who denied food afternoon, if you're a lay person and you're out, and everybody's having a pint, having a drink, if you are strong enough in your mind to keep the fifth precept and deny yourself, and know, even if your friends are making fun of you for it, or you fear that you will be left out, or alienated, or look weird, and you deny that, breaking that precept, in similar to this bhikkhu, you will strengthen your character. You will become you will strengthen your personality, and you will have a stronger mind. You will have a more resilient mind that will be conducive in the long term for greater happiness than that one pint can give you, than that one glass of wine can give you, because that only lasts, I don't know, maybe 30 minutes. So depending on how much of an alcoholic you are, you know, and then the next day you get a hangover. But if you manage to be disciplined enough to say no, stay strong, the benefits of this will last your entire life, and many lives after as well. So it's like this, we train ourselves, just one decision at a time, one thought at a time, one action at a time. So thank you all for listening, and I hope that you all reflect on how you are inheriting the Dhamma and how you are practicing it. Thank you very much for listening. Sadhu. Teruvan Saranai.